If you're exhausted right now, not just physically, but deep down exhausted, this message is for you. If you've been waking up in the middle of the night with your mind racing about things you can't control, if you've been smiling in public but falling apart the moment you're alone, if you've been asking yourself, why does it feel like everyone else has it figured out except me? Keep watching, because what you're about to hear might be the exact thing you needed to find today. You didn't land on this video by scrolling. Something brought you here. Let's just sit with that for a second. There's a verse in the Bible, Jeremiah 29 verse 11, that's been quoted on coffee mugs and graduation cards so many times that most people have stopped actually hearing it. But today, I want you to hear it like you've never heard it before. Because when you understand the full story behind it, it changes everything. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Now here's what most people don't know. When God spoke those words through the prophet Jeremiah, the people receiving that message weren't sitting in comfort. They weren't in their homes, safe, waiting for a blessing to arrive. They were in exile, in Babylon, taken from everything they knew. Their city was destroyed. Their temple was gone. The life they had built, wiped out. And God's message to them wasn't, don't worry, I'm fixing this tomorrow. He told them, settle in, build houses, plant gardens, get married, have children, invest in the place you're in, even though it's not where you plan to be. 70 years. That was the timeline he gave them. 70 years. Think about how that must have felt. That's not a delay. That's a lifetime. That's watching your children grow up in a place that was never supposed to be home. That's waking up every single day in the middle of a situation you didn't choose and didn't deserve. And yet, in that exact moment, God says, I know the plans I have for you. Not I knew. Not I had. Present tense. Active. Right now. In the middle of your Babylon, I know. So let me ask you something personal. What's your Babylon right now? Maybe it's a job you never planned on. You went to school, you worked hard, you did everything right, and somehow you ended up somewhere that feels nothing like the life you imagined. You're not broke, but you're not fulfilled. And that combination is its own special kind of pain, because how do you even explain that to someone? I have a paycheck, but I feel empty. People don't know what to do with that. Or maybe your Babylon is a relationship that fell apart. A marriage that didn't survive. A friendship that just dissolved. You keep replaying the moments where it went wrong, trying to find the exact second where things shifted, wondering if you could have done something different. And the grief of it. Not just the loss of the person, but the loss of the future you pictured with them. That's a weight that doesn't show up on any medical chart. Or maybe it's loneliness. And I don't mean the kind where you're physically alone. I mean the kind where you're sitting in a room full of people, at a party, at work, at dinner with your family, and you feel completely invisible, like you could disappear and no one would really notice for a while. That kind of loneliness is one of the most quietly devastating feelings a human being can experience. And in a country of over 330 million people, millions of Americans go to sleep with that exact feeling every single night. Or maybe you're just tired. Not sleep-deprived tired. Soul tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying anxiety for so long it's become part of your personality. The kind of tired that comes from overthinking every decision, your career, your relationships, your purpose, until thinking itself starts to feel dangerous. You've been surviving so long, you've forgotten what it feels like to actually live. I see you. Wherever you are in that list, I see you. Here's the thing about Jeremiah 29 verse 11 that nobody puts on the coffee mug. It was written to people who had already lost. It wasn't a promise that everything would be okay soon. It was a promise that even in the wreckage, even in the waiting, purpose was still present. That's not a motivational poster. That's something harder and deeper than that. That's God saying, the detour is the plan. The waiting is the work. The place you're in right now, the one that feels like a mistake, like a wrong turn, like a prison, is not outside of his reach. It's inside of it. I want to tell you about something that science actually confirms here, because faith and evidence aren't always enemies. Researchers at Harvard University spent decades tracking what makes human beings resilient, what separates people who get crushed by hardship from people who come through it transformed. And one of the most consistent findings was something they called meaning-making, the human capacity to find a narrative, a purpose, a reason within suffering. The people who recovered, the people who rebuilt, the people who eventually looked back and said, "That season was the making of me." They weren't the ones who avoided pain. They were the ones who stopped fighting the reality of where they were and started asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That's not weakness. That's not giving up. That is one of the most courageous things a human being can do. And it's exactly what God was asking his people to do in Babylon. Stop burning your energy fighting the fact that you're here. Start living fully, intentionally, right where you are. Because the person you're becoming in this season, that person is part of the plan. Can I be honest with you for a second? The version of your life that you're grieving, the one that didn't happen, the one that got interrupted, the one you're comparing your current reality to, that version was never the only path to where you're supposed to go. We live in a culture that is absolutely relentless about comparison. Social media has turned everyone's highlight reel into a measuring stick, and most of us are walking around measuring our insides against everyone else's outsides. And it is making us sick. Anxiety disorders in the United States are now the most common mental health condition in the country, affecting over 40 million adults. 40 million people. That's not weakness. That's what happens when an entire society is told, every single day, through every screen, that you're behind, that you're less than, that someone else is living the life you should have. And into that noise, into that chaos, into that comparison spiral, this verse speaks like a quiet voice in the middle of a storm. I know the plans I have for you. Not them. Not the person whose life looks perfect from the outside. You. There are plans, specific, intentional, personal plans for your life. And those plans haven't been canceled by your circumstances. They haven't been revoked because of your mistakes. They haven't expired because of how long this season has lasted. They are still in motion. Right now, even if you can't see it. Now, I want to be careful here, because this is where this kind of message can go wrong. This is not about sitting back and waiting for God to drop a perfect life in your lap. The exiles in Babylon were told to plant gardens, to build houses, to work for the welfare of the city they were in. There was action required. There was effort required. There was investment in their present, even when the present felt painful. Faith without action is just wishful thinking. And wishful thinking doesn't change your life. But here's what changes. When you genuinely believe that your life has direction, that your suffering has meaning, that the waiting has purpose, you stop carrying it alone. The weight doesn't disappear, but it becomes bearable because it's no longer just weight. It's something more like preparation. Every therapist, every counselor, every pastor who has sat with someone through real darkness will tell you the same thing. The moment a person shifts from, "Why is this happening to me?" to "What is this building in me?" that is the moment something unlocks. That's not denial. That's not toxic positivity. That is the ancient, proven, deeply human act of trusting that your story isn't over yet. You know what's remarkable about Jeremiah 29 verse 11? God delivered that message through a letter, a physical letter, carried through enemy territory, from Jerusalem to Babylon. In the middle of one of the darkest periods in the history of an entire nation, God sent a letter. And that letter said, "I haven't forgotten about you. I see exactly where you are. And I have a future for you that is better than what you're living right now." You're watching a video. Maybe that's your version of a letter. Maybe today is the day something shifts in you. Not because your circumstances changed overnight, not because the thing you've been praying for finally arrived, but because something inside you decided to believe again, decided to trust again, decided to stop letting the pain of where you are rob you of the truth of where you're going. Here's how you carry this with you. Not as a slogan, As a practice, the next time anxiety floods you, and it will, instead of asking, "Why is this happening?" pause, breathe, and ask one different question. What is being built in me right now that I can't see yet? You don't need the answer. You just need the willingness to ask it. The next time you're scrolling through someone else's life and feeling like yours is broken, put the phone down. Look at your own hands, your own life, your own story, and remember, they only show you their gardens. They never show you the exile it took to grow them. The next time you feel unseen, unheard, or forgotten, go back to this verse. Not as a cliche, but as a declaration. There is a God who knows your name, knows your pain, knows exactly how long this has lasted, and has not walked away. And the next time you're tempted to give up on the version of yourself that's still becoming, remember the exiles. Remember that 70 years of waiting produced a generation that rebuilt an entire nation. The waiting was not wasted. Not one day of it. Your waiting is not wasted either. Whatever brought you here today, the algorithm, a random scroll, a link from a friend, a sleepless night, I don't think it was an accident. I think something in you was looking for this. Looking for permission to still believe. Looking for one voice to tell you that the hard season you're in is not the end of your story. Looking for confirmation that the plans haven't been canceled. They haven't. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. That was written to people in exile, in ruin, in the middle of the worst chapter of their lives. And it found them. Maybe today, this message found you.